I'm ready to go when you is.
Word. So let me spit my long, convoluted intro. All right. What up, everybody? This your boy B Rob, and I'm back with another edition of the Random Rambles with Rob podcast. First and foremost, I'd like to thank you, the listener, for coming back each and every week, or however you listen to podcasts. If you're a first time listener, I'd like to thank you oh so much for giving my show a try. And if anybody recommended you to me, I'd like for you to reach over and give that person a crisp high five. Can we do that right now? Do this. You on the other side. There you go. There it is. It's good when you have visual representation. We can do these things or whatever. But if you're still cautious about what's going on in the world today, you're still masking up, putting gloves on, sanitizing very thoroughly, which you should have been doing anyway. Pick up your social media app of choice and send that person a well-crafted DM instead, telling them thank you for recommending you to me. Speaking of social media, you can find the Random Rambles with Rob on various social media platforms to include Twitter at 3R Show, Instagram at the 3R Show. Hopefully soon, since I officially, as of a day ago, I got my trademark in for 3R Show. So hopefully on Instagram, it'll be at 3R Show, because I'm taking that bullshit back. Motherfucker ain't posted since 2017. God damn it. It's my shit. I want it. And if you're looking at us visually, you might be stumbled upon the YouTube. So you can just look for that on at 3R Show. I don't know if at works on there, but look up 3R Show. You find us on YouTube. And for anything that I may have forgotten to mention, you can find it all on randomrob.com. Randomrob.com. Also, you can find merch and all that other cool shit there, but you will also find the sponsor. I must trade my hat real quick. Goddamn, I got to take my headphones off. I wasn't ready for this. There we go. Sponsor hat. Hooks, Rubs, and Spices. Go to hooksrub.com and you can get 15% off your order if you use promo code RANDOM. And I'm fucking up my La Sombra mask right now. Got to put that back. Hooks, Rubs, and Spices. Put it all over your meats, vegetables, whatever. They're making drinks with this shit. I mean, they salting the rims with the different stuff and everything. So you can get all into that stuff. Just get that 15% off your order if you use promo code RANDOM. Now I got to put my hat back on. Fix my stuff. Now, that's mostly for the visual audience or whatever. If it was just straight audio or whatnot, I wouldn't have been doing all these shenanigans. But joining me, special treat for myself, because undoubtedly so, without this man sitting here to my virtual left, real life right, I would guess, there will be no Random Rambles with Rob. B-Rob would still be here because I got that during my military days. But there would be no Random Rambles with Rob. There would be no inspiration. There would be no inclination of even doing a podcast if it wasn't for my guest today. This man has a long lineage in the broadcasting world, starting way back over 17 years ago. Might be a little bit longer, might be a little bit less, but we just generalizing right now. It's been a long fucking time is what I'm saying. And admittedly so, this has been a bucket list thing for me for my podcast. So I'm glad to have it today. Joining me is one William R. Washington, Sr., representing Fightful and Grapsody fame, also former host of RBR Weekly Wrestling Talk, which I have represented enough. I done kissed this man's ass for a couple seconds. Now I got to take this off.
It's a fancy new logo.
And we are here in full effect. Sir, how are you? How are you? I'm glad to have you here. I appreciate you.
I am great, man. But thank you for the kind words. That's a lot of responsibility to put on me, having been responsible for helping get the random ramblings with Rob in effect. I'm glad to finally be here. And you gave out the full Govey, by the way, on I suppose not full because you're missing.
Yeah.
You still
I won't reveal what the R is.
Yeah, but my full Govey. But I am Will Washington, and yes, I'm glad to be here. Thank you for having me.
Yeah. So, man, usually I would start off with this, that, and the third, but I'm not. I would just like to jump straight into your photographic memory, because this has been something that has daggone been amazing me for many a years, especially when it pertains to the RBR Weekly Wrestling Talk and whatnot, to where you have total recall of your brain faculties and everything. And I can hardly remember what I did 5 minutes before we walked into this interview and shit. So this is like, what do you attribute that to? Has it been something that's always been, you know, with you, or is it something that you worked up to? I mean, how does this fucking work?
Yeah. So, and of course, what you're referring to is the fact that yeah, I'm really good about remembering stuff, and particularly good with remembering the history of pro wrestling. And so, having hosted a pro wrestling show for 17 years, various pro wrestling shows, um, yeah, I do tend to recall things easily. A lot of it is association,
Mhm,
and that I learned recently is a good trick for memory, because it's not just pro wrestling. I remember a lot of things in my life. I remember uh, significant events. I can remember um, numbers, stats. I got most of my close people's phone numbers memorized, which like it isn't like terribly an impressive thing to like
mhm.
older people, but like younger people are like, how do you remember any phone numbers?
Yeah, exactly.
Because they're like you can just store it in your phone. But a lot of it is association. So like one of the things I like to do is um, I have a extensive memory of pro wrestling, right? But typically watching wrestling is not the only thing I was doing in my life. And so if I can remember an event in pro wrestling, I can typically remember exactly what was going on in my life at that point in my life and time. Um, and so when like my mom will ask, uh, when did we move from our house over on Wyoming place? And I'll immediately go, oh yeah, April of 2007. And I remember that because uh, because John Cena was feuding with Shawn Michaels and going into the Fatal 4-Way at Backlash, and also Bobby Lashley was the ECW champion, and like there's little shit like that, and I remember those things, and so I'm like, okay, I can remember the exact date that we moved out of that house. But then it's not just that, because like I'm also, for those who can see me, I'm also a big basketball fan. I'm in my Nuggets gear
Mhm.
right now, and I've got pretty much every game from my Nuggets fandom memorized, and it's little things like that that I can use to associate. And uh, if I can associate all of those things together, it helps keep my memory functioning and running. If I lose a point of association, then I lose everything, right?
Mhm.
So if I don't have anything to associate the rest of my memories with, so that's how it goes for me, and it helps. Uh, I don't know. I know my best friend has a terrible memory, and sometimes our entire basis of friendship and conversation centers around us just talking and reminiscing, because she'll call me up and be like, hey, remember that time
Remember
that
that
blah
one
blah blah,
time?
yeah, and she's like, what was happening there? And I'll be like, oh yeah, no problem, let me tell you. And then we'll go over it, and it's fun. It's a good thing to have. um it always actually surprises me when other people can't remember things, because it feels fairly normal to me that I can. And so when people are like, why the hell do you remember that? And I'm like, why don't you? But that's just me.
Word. So, for what I can remember of over my lifetime of listening to you talk to me via speakers and earphones and earbuds and all kinds of other crazy things and whatnot, you moved around a lot, but I think you were born in California.
That's right. I was born in Los Angeles, which is funny because I just got back from a LA vacation, and we went by my childhood house and went by my elementary school and all of that.
So, did you
Well,
remember how to get to these places without maps?
yes, absolutely.
Fuck.
Yeah, we went by my old house. I mean, so I had to get to the neighborhood via map, but then once I was
Mhm.
in the neighborhood, I could navigate around. I remembered whose house was whose and like what kids I used to play with from each house. But yeah, I was born in Los Angeles, and then in '94, when the Northridge earthquake happened, which made national headlines everywhere. I remember that vividly. I remember
So, is
waking
that
up
your
out of
point of association?
yeah, well, yeah, because like that was it was in January '94, and my I I I wasn't conscious for when it happened. I was asleep, and then I remember my dad rushing in my room and grabbing me, and then all of a sudden I remember stuff falling off the walls, and we go and get in our car and just chill in the car. because you're not supposed to drive in an earthquake. But we go chill in our car, and I remember watching the chimney on our house cave in and all of that. And
Fuck.
yeah, that was it for us in California. It was like, because apparently my dad's job had basically like split in two, and
Because
they
of the earthquake?
yes. And so they had offered us the opportunity to for him to transfer because he worked for the federal government.
Mhm.
Specifically, he worked for the VA. And so the VA hospital building, which I actually just drove by as well in LA, but the VA hospital building, they offered employees at the time who were in specific departments a chance to transfer to another VA. And so my dad had the opportunity to transfer from either Tucson, Arizona, or Denver, Colorado. And I remember for the longest time, it was Tucson, Arizona. That was all we talked about was, all right, we're moving to Tucson. And I remember telling all the kids at school, yeah, I'm moving to Tucson, Arizona, whatever. And then, and then that summer we packed up, like they let me finish school that year. And then my brother and I finished school. And then uh, they all of a sudden my parents were like, "No, we're moving to Denver," and we packed up and drove to Denver. And as you can see in the gear I'm in, I've been roughly in Denver ever since. I moved to Michigan for a little bit, but
Yeah.
I've mostly been in Denver uh, the majority of my life. This is what I call home, even though LA is, my brother was 24 when we moved, so it was like he didn't go with us because it didn't make any sense for him. He was already, he had been in
Established, yeah.
well, he had just gotten out of the military too, so it was like he didn't want to. He barely even wanted to move back in with his parents. He had been home for like 4 months when that happened, and so he got home, and then all of a sudden we sprung on him. Hey, we're actually moving to Denver, and he's like,
Son of a
I'm.
bitch.
He's like, I'm not. He's like, I'm gonna stay here. I'm gonna stay here in LA and pursue my acting career. But y'all have fun with all that.
Mhm.
And he's been there ever since. He has not departed. So every time I go back to LA, it's really about visiting him.
Okay. Word. And that's weird because, like, that was something that I never knew, and that was something that probably would never come up on the podcast as well. It's just like that your brother was in the military.
Yeah, he was in the Marines, and he was the, yeah,
Hold on,
and
you need to slide that information over to me. Me and your brother need to have a talk then. The old devil
yeah.
dog there.
Yep, absolutely. Yeah, he. I forget what year specifically he went in because I was born the year he graduated high school, and I'm pretty sure he's 17 years older than me. I'm pretty sure he went in like straight after high school, and so
Yeah.
I barely even knew him until I was like 4 years old, and then I started to see him more.
Mhm.
He always had this forbidden room in our house that I wasn't allowed to touch because it was like, he was 17, 18, he had already
Yeah.
established his room in the house and all that. I was a baby. And like, I remember specifically being told all the time, whatever you do, stay out of David's room. And David's room was like this forbidden palace to me because he had all the cool stuff. And I just wanted to go in his room and like touch all his things, right?
Touch
Because he
everything.
touch every, well, here's the thing. I eventually figured out how to steal stuff from his room because he had
Oh no.
all, he had all the good movies, right? Like all the movies I saw that I became a fan of as a kid were movies I stole from his room. So I remember the first time I saw Batman 1989. That movie was a VHS I took from his room. Same with Who Framed Roger Rabbit.
Shit.
Uh, yeah, he had the Terminator. He had just all these cool movies that he kept locked away in his room, and music CDs too. He had like that was how I discovered hip hop music was stealing his CDs and going and listening to them, and and then putting them back and making sure that nobody knew that I touched David's stuff. And I literally just admitted this to him finally after like 30 years, literally
That
just
was
like
gonna be my follow-up.
like a week ago, I finally like told him all this. I was like, when I was a kid, I used to just like while you were in the military, I used to take all your stuff and play with it. Like it was cool to me. It was way cooler than the toys I had. He had cool adult stuff, and I wanted it. And uh, like I said, that's how. Like I have line for line, scene for scene, the movie Batman memorized, and it's funny that it's all because of taking stuff from him. But yeah,
Have
he
you
was in
seen
the
the new
military.
one?
Yeah, I did see the Batman.
Oh,
It was pretty good.
yeah.
I thought it was Robert Pattinson, I think, is a really good Batman. Lousy
Mhm.
Bruce Wayne, but I think that was the
Mhm.
point. Uh,
Yeah.
and like he didn't really play Bruce Wayne in that
Mhm.
movie at all. In the same way that, like, I guess kind of, you know, people used to say like George Clooney never really played Batman. He was just like George Clooney in a mask. I feel like in a reverse of that, Robert Pattinson never played Bruce Wayne. He just played
Mhm.
Batman without a mask. And so that's like one of the things I'll knock in the movie. Also, pretty sure, and I'm stealing this point from Flash Garments because he was just going off about this. But two bombs went off in that movie relatively close to people's faces. And like neither of them have any goddamn damage. You know, Batman has a bomb go off literally in his face, and he's fine.
Mhm.
Like that mask only covers half your face. What?
Yeah, and all this would have been jacked up.
Yeah. And also another character, without spoiling, also has a bomb go off. And granted, he was throwing the bomb when it happened, so he doesn't like I wouldn't have
Yeah,
expected him to
it's away
die,
from him.
but I would have expected him to take way more damage than he took. And then also, when that person wakes up, why did he just confront him like that badly? Like, why did you lie to me? And it's like, nigga, I just got
Motherfucker,
out of coma. Like, what are you doing to me?
I just awakened.
Yeah, like I don't even know why I'm here, but okay.
Yeah.
So otherwise, it was a good movie.
Mhm.
It was long, and
I
I will
loved it.
say that the point where I thought it was over, like it wasn't even
Yeah.
close. Also, somebody important in that movie gets shot and is pretty okay, like not that long after. And I'm like, look, you got like hit by a sniper, like you should be at least incapacitated.
Mhm.
Um,
Getting
but other
carried off, not leaving on your own wheels and shit, right?
Right, yeah. And so, uh, those are my only gripes with the movie. Otherwise, I think it's a really good Batman adventure that is very different from every other Batman movie
Mhm.
I've ever seen, and I'm a big Batman fan. It is crazy to think that when Batman '89 came out, the talk around it was, "Oh, this movie's very dark." And
Mhm.
then when, The Dark
This
Knight
movie
came out.
says, "Hold my beer."
Yeah, when The Dark Knight came out, it was like, "Oh, wow, this movie makes those other ones look like kids' movies." And now this is like, "Oh, this makes The Dark Knight look like a kids' movie." Like, all of a sudden, it's just so dark. There's so much despair. Like, that is an irredeemable Gotham City. It is really, really dark, but I loved it.
Mhm.
I had fun
Mhm.
with it.
Did you see the new release footage of the deleted Joker scene?
Watched half of it. I didn't get to finish the whole thing. I was
Mhm.
having a hard time hearing it, so I'm like, "I'll watch
Yeah,
it later."
same.
Yeah. So, yeah, I thought I'll watch this with some headphones on, but I wasn't in a position to have any. So no, I haven't seen it in full yet.
Yeah. From what I've seen of it, I think it was a good decision to cut it from the movie and whatnot. Because I mean, it was almost it reminded me of the interrogation scene in The Dark Knight
Right.
somewhat, but it just didn't fit from what I saw in that 3 hour epic, which I seen twice back to
You
back.
saw you spent 6 hours on that movie? Now
Yes.
granted, I saw The Dark Knight, and that movie's 2.5 hours. I'm pretty sure I saw that in theaters 4 times. And so, you know, I spent obviously 10 hours watching that movie. So, I get it when it comes to Batman movies.
So you are talking to the guy that did a Justice League sandwich. I watched Zack Snyder's Justice League the whole fucking 4 hours, turn around, watch the original cut, and then turn around and watch the 4 hour epic again
What'd you do that for?
because I can.
Obviously.
Well, we were gonna talk about the Justice League.
Mhm.
And anytime that I go into a film review or just a chat about a movie, I thoroughly watch that shit. I
Yeah,
love
and
doing that shit. I love it. So I watched it, just with my brain off. Then I watched the original for reference, because I've seen it before, the original one, and then
mhm.
I watched it again to take notes. So it was
Nah,
just like,
that makes
okay,
sense. Like, as long as you were doing it for, like, a podcast or something, but, like, just to be like, "You know what? I wanna watch Zack Snyder's Justice League, and then for whatever reason, I want to watch the original cut, and then I'm gonna go back and watch Zack Snyder's Justice League." You know, it's funny too, is I've only seen Zack Snyder's Justice League one time, and I only saw the original Justice League. The weird thing is, I've seen original Justice League in full once, but I've maybe seen the first 5 minutes of it like 100 times because they always play it on TNT. And
Yep.
so usually like right after AEW Rampage, it'll kick into that scene of Superman with a CG upper lip. And I've seen that scene so many times I could probably recite it. And it's so bad. And it's just a reminder of how much that movie stinks. But
Mhm. I enjoyed it for what it was because, like, I feel like my viewing freaking perception is different from a lot of people because I don't read any of the comics. So I have
okay.
no attachment to the lore or anything like that. So when I watch these films, I was like, oh, it's a movie. And then I'm a visual effects guy. So it can be a shitty ass movie, but you got some special effects in there. I'm like, all right, this is cool.
Yeah.
You know?
Not like I think honestly, because I'm a big Marvel fan as well, and I love the
Hmm.
MCU. I
Yeah.
think the big problem with Justice League to me is that it wanted so badly to be an MCU movie without doing the work the MCU had done. Where
Hmm.
like the MCU did such a great job of individually introducing every single character before we jumped into an Avengers movie. It's like we walked into an Avengers movie having had a connection with Iron Man, having had a connection
Yeah.
with Captain America, having had a connection with Thor, and having at least a little connection to Hulk, even though he was recast. And then we
Hmm.
had been connected with Black Widow, and we had already gotten to know Clint, and so it was like, okay, now we're seeing a movie of all these things we already knew, we
The
already
culmination.
established. Yeah. Whereas Justice League was like, okay, we're going to try and do all of that in one movie. We're going to
Yeah.
try and introduce you to everything but Batman, who you already, and Batman's the only character you already knew, and you only knew him from the previous movie. Um, Superman's even barely in this. And Wonder Woman, but also that movie only came out like a month prior. So, and then it's like you already know Wonder Woman kind of, but then like you don't know this Flash at all. You don't know this Aquaman at all. You don't know this cyborg at all. And we're going to try and throw all of this in one movie
Hmm.
and just try and like throw it at you. And I felt like, nah,
Yeah.
I was like, this movie wasn't earned. You didn't earn any of this. And so
But at the
that was
same
my problem with
time,
it.
yeah, but at the same time, I know, with the exception of Cyborg, Aquaman, and to the extent I can't even talk. Wonder Woman, like you were saying, uh, is like, bitches, you know what it is. You
I
know the
know.
stories. You don't want to see the pearls fall down again. We come on, just put these bitches in the movie and let's get it started. But also, um, my whole thing about it, I probably have some of the same thoughts that you have. It's just like, yeah, it was rushed. Yeah, it was this, and Ben Affleck is Batman. I enjoyed it, but at the same time, I'm glad that he was there and he was gone in the way that he was because it paved the way for Robert Patterson to be in this The Batman movie. Because
Mhm.
we know how it was supposed to go before. It was supposed to be Ben Affleck in The Batman as Batman and directing. Then he
Yes.
bowed out from the leading role
Directing. Yeah.
to just direct. And then he
Uh-huh.
just left completely. So I was just like, what the fuck? Then we got Sparkly Twilight Man here, which I can't talk too much about because I like the Twilight movies. And, and I was just
There's
like,
news.
so this is going to be different. Hey, yeah, no shit. I do like the Twilight movies. I got them all on Blu ray in my collection. And I got all the books, which I have never read. I only bought them for my wife. But yeah, I like vampire sparkly shit.
That's dope.
But yeah, it just that whole thing paved the way for Robert Pattinson to give me this awesome Batman. And then to go back to some of your points or whatever. And I know I already did a podcast on the Patreon about the Batman movie, but hey, I love this goddamn movie. I love talking about movies, period. But he was just year 2 into being Batman. And
Yeah.
he was just burning the candle at both ends, just going into it night and day, just being him.
Oh yeah, this
And the
story
Bruce,
would not have worked
mhm,
with Ben Affleck at all.
yeah, exactly. And then like the thing about his shitty portrayal of being himself, Bruce Wayne, and everything is just more like I believe he's gonna grow into that later because he's gonna come to the realization he's like, hey, I can get more shit done in the daytime, through political means, through my philanthropy and all this other stuff,
Yeah.
than I could just going in and punch a motherfucker in the face.
That's why I don't really fault him for not having played much of a Bruce Wayne, because I'm like, okay, that's obviously a persona that like I think we're establishing that Batman is his true
Is
persona.
him.
It's him,
Yeah.
and Bruce Wayne is a character he has to play for the public, and he hasn't established that yet.
Mhm.
And so I'm hoping we get there, and I'm ready for it.
Yeah. Pretty pleased. And to go back a little more, you said your father worked for the VA. Does he still do that, or he's retired now?
He's retired now. He was
Okay.
also in the military. My dad served in the Navy. He was in the Navy 8 years, 8 months, 12 days.
Yeah, the
And
Marine Corps is Uber.
yeah. Yeah, and it's so funny too because I will say, military guys crack me up because the way y'all can see each other and just
Oh shit.
immediately have conversation. Like, I was with my dad. We were just getting food maybe like a week ago, and he sees a guy in a Navy hat, and the guy sees my dad's Navy hat, and these two men have never seen each other in their lives, but immediately jump into stories.
Mhm.
And they're like, my dad's like, he says, "What year?" And then the guy goes, "I was in from '63 till '74. How about you?" My dad goes, "1960 to '68." And they're like, "Oh, so you were in here?" And my dad's like, "Yeah, and you were there." And then they're just all going back and forth. And I love hearing that because it truly is like a brotherhood. And as somebody who didn't serve but has grown up around people who did, um, it's fascinating to watch how you guys have that brotherhood without knowing each other and gravitate to each other. And it's always fun. And the fact that, like I said, I mentioned my brother served in the Marines, and you're immediately like, "Oh, I got to get in contact with him."
Yeah.
It's that quick, right? And I love watching that. It's always
Mhm.
fascinating to me.
Yeah, that's kind of like how Danny Limelight here. I got his autograph up here on my wall. That's kind of how we got in contact or whatever. I found out he was a Marine. I was like, got in his DM. I was like, Devil Dog, what's up? What's happening? And that's how I
That's
got
so
him on the
great.
show.
Yep. Hey, that rules. That's so good.
Yeah, but I was hoping that he was still working for the VA because I'm doing a claim right now. I'm trying to get 10 more percent so I can be good in my
Ah.
life.
Yeah, no, my dad, he retired from the VA, but he worked there a really, really long time. VA was actually my first job as well. My dad got me in, so I was around. Like I said, it's weird, and I guess this is a story that people don't really know about me. I've been around military people pretty much forever because one of the first jobs I took right out of high school was working at the VA with my dad, and so yeah, and just like I said, being around my brother and all of that, and Swerve was also in the military, and it's just like uh,
I
I've been
knew
around it.
that, but I forgot.
Yeah, yeah.
What branch you was in?
He was a Marine as well, I believe.
Fuck.
So yeah,
Can I get
that's
your brother and Swerve on the same show, please? Because that's all I want to talk about.
yeah. Hey, it would be a very, very different type of interview.
Yeah, so like I know
So
you're
wait, no,
younger
so
out of
no, Swerve was Army. Swerve was Army.
oh, okay, all right.
Um,
Still, my wife was in the army, so that's fine.
yeah.
But so like you being the younger out of in your family or whatever, and your dad and your brother and them being that much older than you and whatnot, like did your brother and Swerve kind of have like a relationship or
Not really.
whatever? Or
They're actually just now. Well, because Swerve's younger than me. That's the other
oh,
thing
okay.
too. Is
Oh
he
shit.
is
Okay.
yeah. He was born '89. But no, they're actually like just now starting to have a relationship. So, um,
Word.
that's all of that. And really, it's all really based on the stuff he's trying to do now with music and acting,
Hmm.
and my brother having been in acting as long as he's been.
Okay. So does your brother have a musical background as well? Because I know you dabble in the
So,
keys and doing all kind
so
of crazy shit.
actually, because David is my oldest brother, and then below him there's Curtis. Curtis is my closest brother. He and I are 4 years apart.
Mhm.
So we have practically been almost inseparable until he moved to Florida on me. So he lives in near Fort Lauderdale now, but it gives me some place to go if people ever wonder, because everybody's always like, "Man, you're always traveling to Florida." Like, yeah, I got family in Florida now, and I
Mhm.
got family in California. I got to see my family, and they got two super young kids. Curtis has a kid who's a year and some change. His son Kennedy. That's right. He has a son named Kennedy Washington. And
Kennedy.
and yeah, that was the first thing that he did the moment he was born. Um, So yeah, Kennedy Washington, and then which is just such a presidential sounding name. And
Mhm.
then David's got uh, his kid is less than 3, and her name's London, and so I've got like 2 babies that I got to visit on 2 sides of the country. So if you ever wonder why I'm California and Florida back and forth, that's
Mhm.
typically why. But yeah, no, Curtis. The reason I brought up Curtis is because he really has the musical background.
Okay.
Um, he was pretty much into making music from the time he was 14. My parents bought him pretty much a studio.
Shit.
We had a studio set up in the basement when we were teenagers, but it was mostly his. I learned following up behind him how to make music. As a matter of fact, when I made the Powerhouse Hobbs song, I actually sent it to my brother as just to kind of show him like,
Proofread, yeah.
yeah, but not just that. It was just like uh, the style of music that like the type of beats I'm mostly good at are more so
Mhm.
East Coast style beats. Like for those of you who listen to the other show Rob hosts, the RBR, I made the beat of the theme song of that. Like that's the type of music I'm more into making. But when Hobbs had kind of wanted something that was a little more Bay Area and but kind of has a little bit of a down south feel. That's the stuff my brother was great at, and so I was mostly like relying on what I remember he was good at, and then kind
Mhm.
of like playing that up. And I sent it to him, and I was like, "These are," and he looked at it like, "Man, this is the type of music I used to make." And I was like, "I know, this was what you were good at. I am a good mimicker, so that's how I got good at it. But like that was what he mastered, and so there's a little bit of I guess insight there.
Mhm. So he gave you the approval, and you was like, "All right, I'm good."
Yeah, he did.
Word, word. So the album, the AEW album that just came out, which I have a copy of floating around here somewhere.
Ah,
It's gonna be released on digital here in April, right?
April 1st.
April
Yes.
1st. Is it really gonna be released on April 1st? Because they're gonna be like April Fool. Nah, we just playing it on the second.
I mean, I guess there's some things relating to that I can't talk about, but
Very well.
yeah, but April 1st is the date that AEW just announced, and yeah, that album is rare,
Mhm,
and I would hang on to your copies if you have it.
mhm,
So, but otherwise, yeah, that is when it comes out. And yes, I have 2 tracks on it. I
mhm,
have the song "In the Mix" by I guess I'm the first artist listed on it. It's by me, um, Wrestle and Flow, Equipped, and Cut Right. And then I also have a song called Powerhouse, which is the Hobbs song that I did with Righteous Reg and Graham
mhm.
of Public Enemies.
Word. Um, I know you talked about it a little bit before, but if you could, for the audience sake, uh, tell us a little bit how that came about.
Yeah, so back last November, I was messaged by Mikey Ruckus. Now, previously, I had done some musical stuff with pro wrestling. I had helped uh, produce the Sammy Guevara theme song
Mhm,
and also Big Swole's song. And so uh, like I said, I had a little bit of background, but basically, Mikey Ruckus hit me up and he said, "This is what I have this interest in doing right now. I really want to showcase Black artists and Black talent in AEW. And uh, I, if you were interested, I would like to see you on this album." And I said, done deal. There's no hesitation there. I didn't even uh, give it a second thought. And so we put that together, and he basically said these are all the wrestlers who will be involved. Pick the top wrestlers you would like to see have your musical touch on. And so I listed my top 5 Black wrestlers in AEW. Everybody kind of listed theirs, and then we all got assigned a different wrestler, and we all got to kind of work directly with them. I worked
mhm,
directly with Red Velvet. I spoke with her and kind of got her taste in music. She's really into Doja Cat and really into a lot of
oh,
reggaeton.
I'm in the
Uh,
Doja Cat too, boy. Wish I had my
Thicker t
cowboy hat.
Yes. Uh, yeah, so she had kinda given me some of her musical taste, and so I kinda produced around that, and the same
Mhm,
deal with Powerhouse Hobbs. There were a couple of songs I was really channeling with Powerhouse Hobbs, and I guess, this is the first time I'll have said this, and somebody can kinda look into the Powerhouse song and then the 2 songs I referenced, and they'll be like, "Okay, I hear what you were doing here." But it was, Get Stupid Go Dumb by Yuck Mouth and Mac Dre
mhm,
and Big Steppin'. And so those 2 songs, when you listen to those and then listen to the Powerhouse Hop song, you go, okay, I see what your inspiration was.
mhm,
And then with Red Velvet, it was kind of the same deal. I was listening to the song Boasty by Wiley, and then I was also listening to Woman, which is Doja Cat's big hit right now. And I was listening to both those 2 songs, and I'm like, okay, I think I can kind of channel some of that into this, and I was able to make it happen. But I put some of my own flavor on both. Like
mhm,
they started in those directions, and then basically I just started going off in my own direction. But you can
mhm,
see where I was starting,
mhm.
and yeah, that was how that all came together. And I got the songs done. You were with me when I got the
Yeah,
finished version of the Red Velvet song, and
I've heard
yeah,
it like 30 times.
yeah,
We heard
it,
it in the car because, like, I never heard this in the car. Play it in the car real quick so we
yeah.
can see how the
I wanted to hear it in a car because I hadn't heard it really at all because
Yeah,
when you're producing music and working with people across the country, there's a whole lot of okay, I did this part now. It's almost like
shoot it off,
friendship bread,
yeah.
right? Where yeah, you got to shoot it off to somebody who sends it to somebody else, sends it to somebody else, and everybody's putting their pieces on it, and then you get the finished version. And so
Mhm.
I hadn't heard the finished version of it until we were in Atlanta, and that
Yep.
was the weekend that it was sent to me, and I heard it, and I was like, "This is amazing!" And it's the first song on the album, so it really sets the tone for the album and what people are going to hear. I love it.
Yeah, but yeah, so you sprinkle a little bit of flavor on there and whatnot for you, and so my question about the whole thing, I mean, is out there as a finished product, is physical and is going to be digital here on April 1st. Is there any inclination that was given to you about there maybe being a part two
Oh yeah,
or
absolutely.
word? So it might be a continuous series.
Yes. That's what I've been
Word.
told anyway, that, there's a reason this was labeled volume 1.
Mhm,
Um, we're gonna continue to showcase Black talent. Uh, there's been new Black talent signed,
mhm,
and some of them are musical artists in themselves, and so, yeah, there's gonna be more. As a matter of fact, I had finished the 3rd track, because I thought I was doing a 3rd. I thought I was doing 3, and I had finished the 3rd, and, but it ended up not getting used,
mhm.
and what I was told about that was, "Don't worry, there's time." So I can almost say I already have another song done, and
Mhm.
so
You just
when
ahead of the
people,
curve.
yeah, just a little bit ahead, and when we hear that one, because there's a couple of songs, I know Rich Latta has told the story of how uh, he basically did 2 Red Velvet, or not Red Velvet, Jade Cargill songs, that they
Mhm,
did the first one, and she basically said, "I like it, but I want a different direction." She was very hands-on with what she wanted,
mhm.
and she was like, "But I kinda wanna go in a different direction." I'm told I'm to blame for that, because, uh, that the she heard the Red Velvet song and decided that she wanted something different than what she got.
Mhm,
Like the first song she got was like just straight hip hop, and but the song that's on the album is very reggaeton as well, and it was a very dance hall song. And I'm told it was because she heard the Red Velvet song and decided I actually want something more like that, and so the first song got scrapped. But now there's a song that was made that could get used at some point,
mhm.
and I know that they want to use it for something else. So we'll see.
We'll see. Okay. So, I mean, having a physical copy of this CD, this thing that you created or whatnot, what was that like for you?
Um, Pretty
Are you
surreal,
Yeah.
because my brother and I, when he was making music, and I used to help him. We would press our own CDs and then stand on the corner and sell them like drugs. And
Yes.
we were those guys, right? We were the guys pushing our CDs on people. Except we were doing. I can't believe people still do that. By the way, I'll be walking around LA and people stop me and go, "Hey, got my CD," and I'm like, "Man, don't you got a SoundCloud? Just give me a card with a QR code. Like, what is the
You
CD?
know,
I got."
I'm glad you brought that up because when I went to Vegas for SummerSlam, we was walking down the strip or whatever, and dude ran up on me with his business card. I had the QR code. He's like, "This is my SoundCloud. This is my other stuff or whatever." I was like, "Huh."
Yeah, no, that's how you get it done. People still stopping me with CDs. I'm like, man, I don't even got a place to listen to this. What are you doing?
Exactly.
I don't
I'm not
think
gonna lie. I bought a CD player when I got this album.
right. I like the last CD I got that I went to listen to. I put it in my Xbox because I was like, okay, I don't know where else to listen to this, so I
Mhm.
guess let's put it in the Xbox. Did you know you have to download an app for that? There's
Yeah.
yeah, I put it in. I thought I was just gonna play it, and it's like, okay, downloading Groove Music, and I'm like, okay, there's a process to this. It's really not that simple to just like listen to music anymore
Well, shit, I'll
off a
just throw it
CD.
in my OG Xbox down here and just burn it to the Xbox.
You can do that now too. Yeah, that's funny. I got my OG Xbox is right over here, like right off camera. I have my so I have every Xbox ever made. I've
Mhm.
got the the 360s over here, my original, my Xbox One X, and then I have the Series X hooked up on my TV upstairs. And then also, here's a rare treat because I am a
Uh-oh.
really big Xbox guy. I also have uh, the 20th
The Duke!
anniversary edition of the Duke, which
I want one of those.
specifically has the
Oh, the
screen.
button work. Oh,
Yeah,
it got a screen, okay.
it's got a screen though. It should anyway. Let me see. All right, I may have to plug it back in.
Oh,
Okay,
so is it
so
wireless?
it's not wireless. So
Oh, okay.
notice it plays like a little Halo clip here with
Oh,
Cortana,
that's oh,
and
shit.
then it goes ready, ready, ready. It's an actual screen, and then it says "Happy
I
20
need
years
that.
Xbox." Yeah.
Yeah, I need
So
that.
this was a great little collector's thing. I bought it, and notice it's all styled like a Banshee. I'm a
Mhm.
really big Halo guy. There's things to know about me, by the way. And this is for people watching visually. If you're listening audio wise, I will narrate what I'm pointing out in this
Of course
room
he
I'm in.
will.
So I'm in the basement of my house. My wife has basically designated the basement to be mine. It is a finished basement, and in this basement is all the things that define me as a geek. I have a Mortal Kombat arcade behind me. I am obsessed with Mortal Kombat. And then and specifically, I had to have this arcade custom made because there's art of Johnny Cage on the side, which is the original Mortal Kombat art.
Mhm.
Um, of course, Johnny Cage was played by an actor named Daniel Pesina in
Mhm.
the 90s. Daniel Pesina had a fallout with Midway, and every release after 1995 of Mortal Kombat, the original, did not have this artwork of Daniel Pesina on the side. Um, and so it's when I was getting my Mortal Kombat arcade, all of the ones that they sell do not have the Daniel Pesina stuff, and I'm like, nope, my childhood memories will be distorted if I don't have it in full. And so I had this arcade cabinet custom made to have the original Mortal Kombat One art on the side that has Daniel Pesina doing the jump kick.
Mhm.
Now the funny thing is Carlos Pesina has like always remained cool with that's his brother who also played Raiden. He's always been cool with Midway. Midway's not even in business anymore, but
Yeah.
now NetherRealm and Warner. And so the Mortal Kombat 2 artwork, which is on the other side of that, does still have Raiden, but you can get that like literally anywhere. But anyway, I mentioned I also have Halo collectibles. I also collect there's Power Ranger stuff behind me.
Mhm.
And then those are all wrestling figures. I've got a Macho Man Randy Savage right there. I've got wrestling belts behind me. These posters are all from events I've been to, the Royal Rumble. There's WrestleMania 32. There's AEW All Out. Um, and the chairs from events I've been to. I love to collect. I
Mhm.
am just a geek like that. And so this little controller here, the Duke, which some think is like the worst controller ever made. I
I
don't
love
give a
that
shit.
one.
I love it. And so when I saw they were making a collector's anniversary edition, it is not wireless.
Yeah, that was the
But
only thing that kinda put me off from not getting it, but now seeing you displaying it and holding it, all the shit that
yeah,
it do, Imma probably get one now.
yeah, I love the little screen on it because that was the thing was yeah, there was always that giant Xbox logo in the center of the
Mhm.
controller, and the question was always why isn't that a screen? Why doesn't it do anything? It's literally just like a big ass Xbox logo. But now it is a screen,
Mhm,
and it does do things, and it's
mhm.
cool. I love it.
Dreamcast, an underrated system as well.
I was a big Sega dude, as a matter of fact, on this shelf. So that's my original Super Nintendo right there, but and that's my original Nintendo 64. But also, my shoulder's kind of covering it. That's
Yeah.
my original Sega CD and Sega Saturn, right over there. I was a really big Sega guy, and so
Did you
um,
have the Sega channel?
yes, I did have Sega Channel,
Alright.
and
Then you are a Sega guy.
I was a say that's how I played most of the games I played because it was
Same.
like
Mhm.
I there are games that I love, of course, but I think that's part of why I gravitated to Game Pass because to me it's like Sega
The
Channel.
same. Yeah.
Yeah,
Mhm.
it's like Sega Channel was, right? Where it's just, let me pay a monthly subscription fee and let me try out some games. Because a lot of the games I'm a fan of to this day are games that I um didn't really uh didn't really like discover on my own. It wasn't like I'd seen them in magazines and stuff, but I couldn't convince my parents to like spend money on this random ass game. But then when I played it in Sega Channel, when I played like Ranger X, I love the game Ranger X for Sega
Mhm.
Genesis. I would have never even given that game a second look if I had passed it on a shelf at like a Blockbuster Video or anything. But Sega Channel, I'm just scrolling and I'm like, all right, let me try Ranger X. Let me try uh what was that game? Think it was called Mutant Chronicles or something along those lines. There was a lot of games that I just tried, and I was like,
Yeah.
Road Rash was another one that I had
Oh,
never.
oh my
Road
god.
Road Rash and Skitchin were the two
Yeah.
games I had. I don't know if anybody remembers Skitchin. That was
Oh, yeah.
a game from EA that used the Road Rash engine, but you were on rollerblades on the street. And it was like controversial and banned from Toys R Us at the time, I think, because they thought that it was a bad influence on kids to teach them to skate in traffic. Um, but the but Skitchin was a great game as well. But Skitchin and Road Rash were the two games that
Mhm.
I would not have given a try to had it not been for Sega Channel. And now like
Boy.
Road Rash is one of those games I still go back and play. Road Rash 2 on Sega Genesis, amazing. And
Oh,
3,
boy.
World Tour, great stuff.
Shit. So my joints was Sunset Riders
Okay.
and freaking, Gunstar Heroes. That was
Gunstar Heroes. So you were
boy,
those are the were those SNK
I
or was that
believe so.
Konami?
I'm not
Now I have to
100% sure.
now I have to look
I
that up.
It was on my they got them on
Gunstar
they re-released them on for as apps on the phone because Sega released a whole bunch of their classic games as, playables on the, freaking app
the
store and shit.
Gunstar Heroes was Sega. I knew that, but
Mhm.
and then what was the other one you mentioned?
Sunset Riders.
Sunset Riders. So those are both Sega games, actually. Now I think about
Mhm.
it. Sunset Riders was no Sunset Riders was Konami. Okay, so neither of those were SNK. I don't know what I was thinking with that. But I think I just associated them with like Neo Geo titles for whatever reason.
Mhm.
But Sunset Riders was definitely Konami.
That and then, a lot of people slept on Vector Man. I like Vector Man.
Vector Man was so dope.
Mhm.
Vector Man and Vector Man 2. Now, honestly, Vector Man was like a real like for people who didn't grow up with that generation of gaming. I think the thing that uh really people missed was how much games evolved within one generation of gaming. Where like if you look
Mm.
at like the earliest Sega Genesis titles, and then you look at something like Vector Man, which is from the end of the Genesis life cycle, and it was like that game was such an advancement over what we originally saw on the console, which was just kind of like enhanced 8-bit stuff. And
Yeah.
then we like truly saw what 16-bit was capable of. That jump from the original Sega Genesis titles to the end is incredible. Like the difference that a 1990 Sega title looks versus a 1996, that 6 years. If you never got a chance to experience that, I do recommend it just because it is fascinating to see how much we learned about that technology.
Mhm.
Whereas I don't feel like a game from 2013 looks all that different from a game from 2022, just
Yeah.
because like the hardware's gotten better, but like the techniques are mostly all the same. And
Yeah,
so,
it's a lot of copy paste shit that we complain
yeah,
about. But yeah, it's just like I don't know. It's that goes with the lifespan of these consoles as well. It's like it'll drop in 2000, and then the developers will have that 10-year learning curve to perfect everything. Then you get the fleshed out game in 2010, and then boom, new console. I was like, all
Yeah.
right.
And that's how it was back then too, but I feel like the jump was so huge. So huge.
Mhm. Word. Earthworm Jim as well.
Earthworm Jim, that was another one that,
And
I had played via Sega Channel.
yeah,
Because remember they had
Earthworm.
remember at Sega Channel, they had the test drives where you could play games,
Mhm.
like, before they came out, the games that, like, weren't quite
Yep.
finished yet, and so I remember they had the test drive of Earthworm Jim 2, and they had the test drive of Mortal Kombat 3, and, with Mortal Kombat 3, it only had, like, 4 playable characters and, like, 2 stages, but you got to kinda see it
See what
before it
was
was
coming.
released.
Yeah.
Yeah, and,
Fucking love the Sega Channel.
yeah, man.
Innovators.
It was
Sega was
that
always before their time.
way before their time, especially now that, like, everybody nearly 30 years later is doing subscription services where you got Xbox, Game Pass, but then PlayStation's got theirs, I forget what it's called.
PlayStation Now or something.
No, they got a new one that they're, like, actually doing, like,
Oh,
a Game Pass competitor. I forget. It has a kind of a unique name. But go figure, like, Sega was literally doing this, before high-speed internet existed. They were doing, uh a
I
straight
remember
up game subscription service where you pick your games and play, and it actually came through your cable, which is
cable.
interesting.
Yes.
Before cable internet was a thing,
Yeah.
before home cable internet was a thing, you had a service that hooked up to your cable line,
Yes.
and it got you video games.
I didn't understand it, but I didn't give a fuck because I was playing video
Right.
games.
And now it's a lot of what we see today, so it's just really fascinating. And
Mhm.
now you can just play all that shit in your browser because those games are less than like 2
Yeah,
megabytes.
for real. Then
And
you got all these emulator boxes and shit. You can just hook up and just throw all that shit in there.
yep.
It's fucking crazy. But shit. Here we are, some 17 years later from your genesis of
Genesis, huh?
of
Go figure.
see what you did there. I don't have my
Yeah.
sounds hooked up. I hit the horns on that. But for those who are unaware and uninitiated, about 17 years ago, you started a podcast, or you got into podcasting, pretty much,
Yes.
or whatever. What kind of prompted you and led you into that?
It was um it was one specific episode of a TV show called The Screensavers that used to come on Tech TV. See if I can narrow it down. The October 20th, 2004 edition of The Screensavers, I believe it was. Um, and let me
Before
see.
you get too far, do you if you touch things that you've been associated with, do you get the memories and shit of it? So, like you say, you've been to that Royal
like
Rumble. Do you touch the poster? You be like, oh, all the memories.
yeah, like they have the Vulcan thing going on. But just a sec, I want to see if I was correct on that because I think I
Mhm.
have the episode. Let's see. Tech TV 10/20/2004. Pulling this up now. It's opening. Let's see if I'm right. Yep, October 20th. Damn, I was right. Right on the money. The October 20th, 2004 edition of the Screensavers. And if my memory remembering that is really impressing you, that show came on every day. That was a daily show. So the fact that I remember specifically the date is one of those things that I'll always carry with me. But so there was the screensavers for people who don't know what that show was. It used to come on Tech TV. Tech TV was the precursor to G4.
Mhm.
And actually, the Screensavers was a daily technology talk show. It was originally hosted by Leo Laporte and Kate Patello. Kate Patello was replaced by Patrick Norton, and then in 2004, Patrick Norton was replaced by, or sorry, Leo Laporte was replaced by Kevin Rose, and then Alex Albrecht replaced Patrick Norton around the end of 2004, and then they like fired the whole cast at the end of 2004, and then replaced them with Kevin Pereira, and then they renamed the show 5 months later to Attack of the Show. So if you ever wonder where Attack of the Show came from, it was literally a retooled version of the Screensavers. But anyway, I was really into the Screensavers really from the time it launched, and I used to sit at home and watch that show every single day, and it really like gave me my love for tech. But one day, October 20th, 2004, that show used to take live calls, and they would answer live calls on the show, and they would talk about that they would answer people's tech problems or answer their tech questions. And so on that specific episode, they did a segment where they're like, we're going to take rapid fire random live calls. And I know the show sounds boring as hell, but like it was really entertaining. They had a lot of laughs. Like it was great. I love the screensavers. So on that episode, they were taking these random live calls. I remember there was a caller, and I actually reached out to him on Twitter because he's actually got a bit of a following. He is at MB. He actually owns just that
Damn.
literally just MB. His name is Matt Bischoff, and Matt Bischoff had called into the screensavers, and he had said, "Hey, are you guys ever going to talk about podcasting?" And Kevin Rose goes, "Podcasting, that's a great idea. Have you ever heard about podcasting?" And Martin Sargent, who was co-hosting at the time, because Alex was out, I think, filming a commercial for Dell. Martin Sargent's like, "No, what is podcasting?" And Kevin Rose goes, "Oh, it's a great, it's a really great thing. Let me show you." And he was like, "Let me go to podcast.net," but he accidentally types postcast.net, and he hits enter, and like a porn pop-up comes up on the screen.
Ooh.
And like this was live TV, and everybody is like, "Oh my God, what's happened?" Everybody's laughing. And because this was back in the days of pop-up ads, and everybody's laughing, and it was a good time. And then they moved on to the next thing. But I'm sitting here like, wait, y'all never answer. What is podcasting? And so um, I was still stuck on that. I'm like, I want to know what podcasting was, and I need to know what podcasting was. And so I end up going to
Carefully
podcast.
typing
Yeah,
typing
I'm
in
like
the
podcast.net, and I check it out, and I noticed like, okay, this is kind of a cool thing. There aren't that many podcasts, to be honest. There's As a matter of fact, there weren't many at all. But I noticed it was just something I was kind of interested in. And then over the next 6 months, I start listening to podcasts, and uh, I decided right around June of that year that it was something I wanted to do. And a few months prior to that, most of the guys who were let go from the screensavers in Tech TV had started up a network called twit.tv. They're still going to this day. It stands for This Week in Tech, TWIT. They had started podcasting, and they were doing podcasts about tech. And I decided, listening to them, this is what I want to do. I love listening to these guys. This is a dream. This is what I want to do. And so I started going over topics, and I was like, what am I good at talking about? And there's two things I'm really good at talking about: this technology and pro wrestling. And originally I was going to do a tech show. But I thought, you know what? Tech and podcasting is kind of saturated already. Leo Laporte seems to have that held down with Twit. I don't think I'm going to do that. Let me try pro wrestling. And so I picked pro wrestling as my topic. The first person I reached out to was a man named Anthony Scatz. He was the first person I reached out to, and I asked if he'd be willing to do a podcast with me. He said, "What the hell is a podcast?"
that.
And I was like, just trust me. Basically, it's like a radio show, and we talk, and people will listen to us. He's like, "Okay, if you say so." And then I had gone to Nick Marsico after that, and I was like, "Nick, would you be interested in doing this?" Because Nick was doing college radio at the time, and Nick was like, "Yeah, sure, if this podcasting thing ever takes off." And then we still needed a fourth person, and I had hit up Michael Z, because we had, so the four of us were already kind of writing a blog. And so it was like, what if we took the four of us writing this blog, and then we turned it into a podcast?
Audio version, yeah.
Yeah, and we did an audio version of this blog. And so that's how the Fatal Four was born. It was me, Michael Z, Anthony Scatz, Nick Marsico, and we started the original version of RBR. And then we just went from there. But yeah, I did originally start it off of literally that episode of the Screensavers gave me the idea. And I sat for months thinking, what do I want my podcast to be? And now, obviously, if this were today, and I said, okay, what do I want to do a podcast about? And I said wrestling, That's the market that's oversaturated now. At the
Yeah.
time, like at the time, if you did a search on podcast.net, which there wasn't iTunes Podcast or Apple Podcasts or any of
Yeah.
that, it was literally you went to podcast.net and you had to get a specific
URL
application for just
or
podcasts.
RSS.
Yeah, to put your RSS feeds in. If you did a search back then for wrestling podcasts, nothing. There was two others. There was Smart Wrestling Fan and Revenge of the Wrestling Fans. And Smart Wrestling Fan is still around. Revenge of the Wrestling Fan maybe did like 3 other episodes after that, and then they called it quits. So like we were the first two. Was the longest lasting two were RBR, Smart Wrestling Fan, and that was it.
Man, so like you giving your origin story is kind of similar to mine in the fact to where like I found out. I don't even remember how I found out about podcasting per se. I think I might have got my first iPhone.
Uh-huh.
And it popped up on there. And I
See,
was like,
it's crazy that like think about how long the show you host RBR has been around, where there's an episode talking about the launch of the iPhone and what it could possibly be, and is this thing even going to matter or last? That episode exists because
that's
RBR
crazy.
predates the iPhone.
See, there's your time of reference, people. But
Yes.
I got an iPhone. I think my first one was a 4 or something. And it wasn't on there at first, but when they did the software updates and they changed the iOS, it popped up the icon, a little purple square, and it said podcast. I was like, what the fuck is this podcast? And then I go in there, and it wasn't many, like you were saying. And I was like, well, what would I want to listen to? And I think some of the first things that I came up, I just went with the top things at the time, and that was Kevin Smith pretty much. He was dominating everything as far as podcasts go at the time. So I listened to everything Kevin Smith. Tell him Steve, Dave, fucking the Schmodcast, Jay and
I
Silent
remember
Bob Get
all of this, by the way.
Old.
Yeah.
Goddamn. Later on, they would make other shows and Fat Man on Batman, just all kinds of stuff. I mean, those would come way later, but originally for me, it started off with Kevin Smith and everything that he did. So I listened to all that, and I was like, well, if there's this, I said, I wonder if they have anything about wrestling. So I type in, wrestling, and the
Mhm.
first podcast to pop up was not RBR, surprisingly at the time, but for me, uh introduction to the first pro wrestling freaking podcast was the Don Tony and Kevin Castle show.
Okay.
So I listened to them for a while, and then I was like, I need some varying taste or whatever because I like their opinions and everything, but it was just these two, and it was kind of getting repetitive from what they were saying at the time. So I was like, let me look around and find some other stuff. So there were people that would call into that show, and they started their own brand of show called Wrestling Soup.
Mhm.
So I would
I
listen to
remember
a little
Wrestling
bit of
Soup.
that here and there, and then they had people that would call into that show, which would have Julian Excalibur, and he would spawn off from that and do the Wrestling Court podcast, and then so I would listen to all three of these, and I was just going around, going around, going around, and then one day, just going through a wrestling church, RBR Weekly Wrestling Talk pops up. And I listen. And I think the iteration at the time was you, Matt, Felipe, and
And
Paul.
Paul. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. So I would listen to y'all, and then I was
So
there
was
for
this
when it.
09? Because Felipe didn't join till 10.
So yeah, I mean, when I first started listening, Felipe was always there.
Okay.
So it had to be 9-ish, 10-ish, or whatever. Because like I said,
Felipe joined
I
January of 2010. Or yeah, January 2010, January 1st. Because that's when we did the co-host search. He won. We announced it at the very beginning of 2010. And then
okay.
that we went from there.
All right. So because I got a child that's 11. So there we are. So that's probably my span. So I found this podcast and I listened to it every week that it would come up. I mean, I've had podcasts in my cycle of podcasts that I would listen to that were kind of, I don't want to listen to this shit no more. But throughout that whole life cycle, RBR has remained. I've been a part of the community the whole time. I've called in a couple of times. I've been a guest on the show a couple of times and everything. I even got to meet a lot of y'all in person and shit or whatever. I think the first person that I met out of the group was Paul. And that was because y'all gave away tickets to a ROH show. And I had to get the tickets from Paul, and that was in Dallas. So me and Paul sat together at a ROH show. And then we did the meetup in Dallas as well, to where I got to meet you. I got to meet Maxwell,
Michael Z
and
was
Michael
there.
Z was there. I gave him a ride to his room.
Mhm.
Yeah, ACH was there for some reason.
Yep.
A drunk white girl stepped on my belt, and I was pretty pissed about that. It's just a whole. I think Barry was there. He came
Yeah,
over.
Barry Ladd was there. Australian Amy was there.
Yep.
Emerson was there. Yeah,
Yep.
there's a lot of people. Yeah.
Yep. I just reconnected with Emerson or whatever. I need to talk to that guy because I posted, because every Wednesday I say Happy RBR Day, and I post like RBR stuff, and I found those pictures from Dallas, and he was in there. He's like, "Hey, that's me." I was like, "There you are, you motherfucker! I thought you got
Yeah.
off Twitter or something."
Yep.
But yeah, and so listening to these different podcasts and everything, and at the time I was getting ready to exit the military around 2016, 2016. And my time was winding down in the military, and I didn't know what I was going to do when I got out, because this is scary. 15, 16 years of my life, which has just been dedicated to doing this one thing. And I was like, you know what? Maybe I should write a book or something, chronicling my time in the military and all the friends I met along the way, and they can tell their stories and all kinds of shit like that. But then I started listening to these different podcasts, and the Fatal Four and Kevin Smith and Scott Mosier and all these guys. I was like, well, they sound like they're having fun just bullshitting with their friends. I was like, why don't I do a podcast? And instead of writing all this bullshit down, which I hate doing, why don't I just talk about it and have people come on and we talk about these stories in the military? And I was just like, yeah, I do a fucking podcast. And that's where it happened. So there it is. So I started doing the podcast. I think the first 5 episodes was just, me talking to my military folks, sharing stories. I think me and Nick did the first iteration of Wrestling This Trash in that first 10 episodes of the Random Randoms with Rob, because he wanted to come over and talk about The Undertaker and some other shit. So we set up the studio in the house, put up the microphones and everything. And we were just talking about wrestling and everything. And then I retired. I separated from the military. And then I moved here to Houston. And I was like, well, fuck, I just can't keep talking about military stuff. I mean, that's behind me now. And then I know that people that I joined the military are been in the military with, they busy still doing military shit and, living their lives. I didn't want to really bother them as much. So I was like, fuck it. I'll talk to random motherfuckers, just whoever I can find on the internet, whoever willing to sit down and talk with me. That's who I'll have on the podcast, exactly. So I just start speaking to random people, porn stars, goddamn writers, actors, fellow podcasters for the most part, because day one goal for me was, everybody talk about, being famous and all kind of stuff and making money and all kinds of shit like that. But it really wasn't the goal for me. My goal was to get well known enough to where I can have a guest and put them on and promote their talents. So it would be like, if I believe in you and your music, hey, I want to have you on the show so other people can hear about you and your music. That's always been the goal for me. That's how I went about choosing guests. And some of them came about randomly or whatever. It's just like, I felt like talking about this and use the nearest motherfucker. So that's that's who I'm talking to. So yeah, that's kind of my origin story with this shit and everything. So thank you, RBR. Thank you, Don Tony Kevin Castle. Thank you, Kevin Smith, for inspiring me to do these things and have me here sitting with Will Washington.
Beautiful. Beautiful.
Yeah. Went on a random rant. That's what we do over here
Hey,
sometimes.
that's what it's all about.
Yeah. But yeah, man, there's just a lot of things going on. And so we're past your time here with RBR Weekly Wrestling Talk. You've moved on, and started to further progress your career and everything. You went in a different direction. You're starting to do more video content now, and you're doing the podcast that we know now is Grapsody. So
That's
how did
right.
that come along?
Grapsody came about because uh, Grapsody has really been kind of the, um, I'll say, the combination of what I felt my vision for what I wanted to do in wrestling podcasting
Mhm,
um, is. And it really started off with me doing kind of a sideshow to RBR every Saturday for, I think it was only like 7 weeks. I
mhm,
did a show called Wrestling with Weekends. And it was a show I started. Thank you. Yeah, I started doing a show called Wrestling with Weekends, and it was really that show was really me testing the waters of what else I wanted to do with podcasting. In that I knew I wanted to do a video show. I knew I wanted to take kind of a more positive approach to pro wrestling, and I knew that I wanted to do it Saturday mornings, and uh, and so yeah, I started Wrestling with Weekends and the show was going well.
mhm,
And my second guest on the show was Phil Lindsay,
mhm.
and that episode did really well.
So before we go too far beyond that, prior to that episode, I just come across Phil on Twitter or whatever. I
Mhm.
just the Twitter gods aligned us some way into where I come to know him and I found out who he was. That's around the time they introduced Twitter Spaces.
Yeah,
So I felt
Twitter, Phil, the king of Twitter Spaces.
yeah, so
Uh,
I fell into a Twitter space with him. And I just got to hear his thoughts and pretty much his profession, what he does. He does writing and everything. So I got to know him in that aspect prior to that episode because I didn't know you knew him prior to that.
he had hosted RBR before.
He did.
So yeah, he did.
So that's time
So
gap for me.
And
Yeah,
so before we did wrestling with weekends, he was on the wow, what did we just see for Revolution? It was me, Phil, and Maxwell.
okay. So
Um,
that's probably why I missed it.
yeah. So that the first podcast I had ever done with Philip Lindsay was the recap show of Revolution in 2021 with Maxwell and Phil. So this was kind of us being back together. But Phil had attended the CM Punk show, the show
Mhm.
CM Punk
Yeah.
returned at, and so Phil and I did this episode, and the episode did really well. Um, to this day, it is the most downloaded RBR podcast ever.
Mhm.
That episode of Me and Phil, um, Wrestling with Weekends, episode 2. And so I knew Phil was somebody going forward I wanted to work with. Had a lot of fun with him on that
Mhm.
show. And after the show, Phil and I just have the ability to just talk for hours. After the
Oh,
Revolution
I've
podcast,
seen.
yeah. After the Revolution podcast, me and Phil, after Maxwell jumped off and then, went to say bye to Phil, we ended up talking another 2 hours after that. So like I knew for a long time Phil was somebody I wanted to work with. And it was probably about 3 or 4 weeks later, I had Reg on Wrestling with Weekends.
Mhm.
And we did an episode talking about the Black Wrestling's 500. And we ended up
Which I
just
seen
again,
that shirt out in the wild. It was fucking crazy. I did a
yeah.
commentary for a wrestling show in Dallas.
Hmm.
And there was a guy walking around with the Black Pro Wrestling 500 on his shirt and everything, and I took
That's
pictures
dope.
of it and everything.
Yeah, well, so, and I remember that episode was September 11th,
Never
2021.
forget.
Yeah, and that's how I remember, right? And so me and Reg had done that episode, and at the very end, I gave the obligatory, "Hey, Reg, we gotta have you back on the show one day." And Reg said, "Yeah, maybe one day me, you, and Phil will do something." And, and then I said, "All right, we'll see you next time. Have a great night. Peace." And then it hit me, and I was like, "Yeah." That would be pretty great, wouldn't it? And so that was Saturday. I spent all day Sunday just thinking about it. Okay, me, Reg, Phil, we got to do something. He's right. And so I then went to um who did I go to first? I went to Phil first. And I was like, so Reg mentioned something, and it's stuck with me, and I want to follow up on that. And so I called Phil and we talked, and I said, "This is my idea. I want to do a show, me, you, and Reg, and uh, and part of what I want to do with this show is I think the three of us have been, we both kind of have a presence within what I would call white spaces. That even though I created RBR, I would call RBR a white space. That the three of us have presence within white spaces, and but the three of us have black voices within white spaces. And wouldn't it be great if the three of us were able to take these voices and bring them together and uh, and present kind of a different look at
Mhm.
pro wrestling in the black space? Because it's not to say that there weren't voices in the black pro wrestling space, but um, not a whole lot of them focus on indie wrestling. Not a whole lot of them, I would say that a lot of them are very WWE centric. And so we
Yeah,
thought about what we wanted to do with this and what we wanted to bring to the table, and how one of the things that Reg is really good at is highlighting um, up and coming black talent. And I
yeah,
realized like this is exactly kind of what the three of us want to do is and talk about. And so brought that to Phil first. Phil was like, "All right, I'm in." And so I'm like, "All right, Phil's in." Then I went to Reg, and I was like, Reg and I got on the phone, same deal. I told him Phil's in, and Reg is like, "All right, I'm in." And so I was like, "All right, this is it." And I remember my wife was coming back from a trip, uh, and I had to drive to the airport to pick her up. And as I'm driving from the airport, or driving to the airport, so my car's still empty, names are just going through my head. And I remember I was passing the intersection of Airport Boulevard and 6th Avenue. And then it just hit me, Grapsody. And I was like, okay, I think that's the name. And my wife gets in the car from the airport. And I said, "What do you think of the name Grapsody?" And she's like, "I like it." Well, first she's like, "What does it mean?" And so she looks up the definition of rhapsody. And when she sees the definition of rhapsody, she's like, "Rhapsody, Grapsody. I like it. I think it's good." That's why the intro of the show Grapsody
has the
has the
definition.
definition of rhapsody there, because the name works for you the moment you recall or know what rhapsody means. Some people don't. So that was like putting it there in the intro. And that was really from my wife not really knowing the word rhapsody, or at least like she knew it from like Bohemian Rhapsody, but didn't know the exact definition. And so once she knew that, and then she was like, "Rhapsody, I like it." So I went back to Reg and Phil, was like, "I think we're going to call this Grapsody." And they were both like, "All right, we're in." And that was pretty much a done deal until I
Until
said to, so we knew we were going to launch this show. That was it. That's a piece of it that a lot of people don't know. A lot of people think that I just left RBR, went to Fightful, and that was done deal, right? But no, I had already had the idea for Grapsody, and we were going to launch that on our own independently.
mhm,
And like most is probably going to be a fan off show, but we were going to launch that independently. And then uh, I had turned to the two of them in our group chat, and I was like, "I think I have one more uh one more piece of this that I want to try and complete." And I said to them, "If nothing comes of this, you'll never hear about it again. But if it does, then it's a game changer for starting this podcast." And
mhm,
so over the last couple of years, I've become friends with Sean Ross Sapp.
mhm,
And so I love talking to Sean. And Sean and I exchange ideas all the time. I had last summer where Sean and I met up while he was in Denver for a wedding, and we had dinner, and um, we had talked about maybe working together one day, but we weren't sure on what. But we knew we liked each other's energy, and so I messaged Sean and I was like, "Hey, can I have like 15 minutes of your time? And if that's all I need, because if I can't make this pitch in 15 minutes, then we don't have nothing." So, um, Sean, it was like right before an episode of he had to do a live stream, and he's like, "Okay, time's limited, but what do you got?" And so I told him, I was like, "Okay, me, Reg, Phil, we got a show that I am interested in, uh, or that we're launching. It's called Grapsody. This is what we want to do with it. But I really think that a good place for it would be Fightful. I think that we're all well acquainted with Fightful. Phil had already hosted multiple Fightful post shows. Reg, of course, writes for Pro Wrestling Illustrated. I had done the distraction already. And so we all kind of had a little bit of involvement with Fightful as it was. And so I said, this is what we want to do. These are the topics we want to bring to light. And this is something that's not just missing from Fightful, but it's really missing from the mainstream pro wrestling space as a whole. That the Observer has nothing like this. Wrestling Inc. has nothing like this. And Pro Wrestling Insider has nothing like this. Like, I think that it is going to be really good to give Black voices a place to go in who I believe truly, and this is before I joined Fightful, I truly believe that Fightful is the leader in breaking pro wrestling news and bringing
Mhm.
pro wrestling content, and in doing it in a way that I truly believe is from good people that
Yeah.
are relatable. And so I said that Grapsody is a good fit for that. What do you think? And Sean didn't even hesitate. Sean was straight up like, "What days do you want to do it?" I said, "Saturdays." He said, "What time?" I gave him the time. He said, "You're on." That's it.
Word.
He was like, "This is it." And we discussed all of the technical details, all that financial details, all of that. Done deal. And I went back to Phil and Reg, and I was like, "So remember that thing I said where I had one more thing that could possibly be a thing? So here it is. We're going to be doing the show on Fightful." And they were like, "Shut up!" And I was like, "Yeah, it's a done deal." And everything just kind of came together after that. And then that following Wednesday, I announced my departure from RBR. And then the uh, Wednesday after that, I did my last episode of RBR. And then the Saturday after that, started Grapsody. And it was like all that fast. And literally, that was all 6 months ago. And we've been
Mhm.
just rolling ever since.
Well, I know for me personally, doing something for so many years, it was a little. I had a little wear on me after stepping away from the military or whatever. I wouldn't
Mhm.
equate this so much to the same, level of thing or whatnot, but it was a part of your life for the better part of
16 years.
17,
I
yeah,
did
16.
RBR 16 years. Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's not to say that it wasn't, because
Mhm.
that show was a big part of who I am. Like, I've only been with my
Mhm.
wife 13 years, right? So like
Yeah.
and I met her on a Friday night when I first started RBR, or when RBR started for the first uh 8 years of RBR's existence. It was on Saturdays. And so I remember vividly uh, when I told her that we met on a Friday, and it was like, "What are you doing tomorrow night?" And I was like, "Oh, I host a wrestling podcast. So I have to do that tomorrow night." Um, and I'm surprised she didn't leave me right then and there, but or say, "Oh, let me go talk to somebody else." But that was actually because I met her on June 19th, 2009, and we had the 4-year anniversary of RBR the very next day. And so that was the thing I mentioned to her, was I was like, "Actually, we've got our 4th anniversary show coming up." And she's like, "Really? You've been doing this for 4 years?" And she's like, "That's a really long time." And now 4 years seems like fucking child's play.
Mhm.
But she was like, "You've been doing this 4 years? That's crazy." And I said, "Yeah." And but it was a big part of who I am, and it was a big part of my identity doing that show. And so yeah, leaving it, I gave a big speech at the end of it, that I thought really encapsulated how much the doing it had meant to me, and how much being a part of it had meant to me. So yeah, leaving it, that wasn't exactly like the easiest decision, because it was a big part of my identity and who I was. I started hosting that show when I was 17. I'm 34 now, so that
Mhm.
means doing that show 17 years. That's half my life was spent doing that show. And so it was really hard to kind of put it into words of like, okay, I still want to talk about wrestling, but I don't necessarily feel this is the right place for me to continue doing so.
Mhm.
And I know that was hard for a lot of people to understand, people on the show, people off the show. Um, but I was able to make it happen.
Yeah. I know, and it just, I don't know. I can't really speak to that situation well, but it's just like, when it's time.
Hmm.
You feel it inside yourself or whatever, that this is not the thing that you want to do anymore, and you need to try to do something else. I can totally understand that. or whatever. Because when it got, I stayed 16 years, but at year 12, I was like, I'm done with this shit. I was about to walk away with nothing, because 20, I got lucky in a sense because 20 years is, retirement. You
Right.
do 20 years in the military, you can walk away with a retirement pension and all that other stuff. I was about to hang it up at 12. I wouldn't have got shit, you know. But I was like, I'll hang on a little while longer, see, how things change. Which for me, that last couple of years was probably the best decision I made, despite the situation that I was put in. I went to Fort Leonard Wood, Missouri, to where it's the armpit of Missouri or whatever, because it's literally down the road from a place called Devil's Elbow. So you got the armpit elbow. And it was great for me because they made me an instructor. I had to teach people and everything. I had to give back to my community of motor transportation. So I had to go instruct the next generation of Marines that would be a operator in the transportation field. So I was definitely afraid to speak in a public forum, to stand up in front of people and to speak and do a curriculum and everything. That frightened me to no end. But going to this place, they gave me the adequate training that I needed. They built my confidence up, and it ultimately aided to me doing a podcast as well later on. So I'm forever grateful for that time. And then what I really enjoyed and loved about that time frame as well is I got to talk to the young people. I was like, hey, man, I was here 14, 15, 16 years ago in the same seats that you're sitting in, because we don't upgrade shit because we use shit till the wheels fall off of this motherfucker. Same building that I came in here in 2000. It's the same building that we teaching in, all these years later. And I'm like, hey, man, you need to look out for this. You need to be worried about this. You need to put some money away over here or whatever. Because when I came through, nobody was talking to us about that. It was like, sit your ass here. This is how you start the truck. This is how you drive this bitch. And then get the fuck out of here and go do work. I was like, nah, I wanted to give these guys and gals, some heads up, because this next 4 years or next 10 years or next 15, 20 years that you're going to be doing, it's going to be some hard shit. And these are some of the things that they won't teach you in these types of classes. So I'm forever grateful for those moments that I was able to get at the end. But when Trump was going up for election, and just still, I was feeling this type of way, even though I was having a good time with these students and, having these bonding moments with the future of the Marine Corps, I was still wasn't really feeling it. I was like, nah, this is not for me anymore. And went to Afghanistan, and it was drawing out, and it was like, hey, everybody with 15 years or more, but less than 20, we want to offer you the Terror program, which is the temporary early retirement something or whatever. I forget what the acronym stood for. And it was like, you can retire now. I was like, yes, please.
Oh, yep.
I mean, it's a
Bye.
reduced, yeah, it was a reduced percentage. Like, if you get 20, you get 50%. But since I did 16 in some months or whatever, I got like 41 point something or other, which the difference wasn't game changing or whatever. I stayed a full 20. So I was like, check, please. Let me get this money and get the hell out.
Yeah.
And I never regretted it. I mean, I miss it, but I never regretted making that decision.
Yeah, and that's how it is, right? Because and okay, of course, like I said, like you said, RBR
Mm,
not going to compare it to serving in the military. It's not even
mm,
close to the same, but it was something I did a long time, and it was a big part of my life. Because, like you had said, by year 12, you had kind of figured out, okay, I'm kind of out. I will say by about 2020, I had known that. I wasn't going to continue doing RBR a whole lot longer. And I
mm,
had even informed the guys that, hey, I kind of have a bit um, of an exit, and I think I know when it's going to be, and it's going to be in the next year. So they had known pretty much before Maxwell had left, before Eric had left. Uh, I was kind of the first to inform them that, hey, there's going to be a show without me at some point, and and this is what I'm looking at. And I pretty much knew, um, I will say September September 8th. Let's see. My last episode was what, September 29th, I want to say. Well, let me look at a calendar here.
Yeah, because I was about to say
September
you
29th.
you act
Yeah, September
I was about to
29th
say
was
because
my
you're
last.
asking the wrong person about to
Yeah,
remember shit.
September 29th, episode 835 was my last episode of RBR. I would
Mhm,
say I probably knew by episode 8 or not 8, 832 on September 8th that I was pretty close to having already made that decision. And then that was just kind of where it all came through. But like I say, it was a big part of who I am. I'm glad the show's getting to continue. That was the one thing I had said when I told them in 2020 that hey, I probably won't be doing this show beyond. I think I had told them honestly, we're past my exit date. I told them in 2020 that I was going to be done by February of 2022, and we're actually past that now. So regardless, it came a little bit early, but not a whole lot early.
mhm.
Um, and so uh we're not that far past where I was going to originally leave, but yeah, it was that was around the point that I knew was around 2020, and then when it was a like definite decision was early September.
Word. Okay. So to speak about RBR and everything, what are your thoughts and feelings about this 16, 17-year lineage and the community that it has created?
I love it, and uh that's a big piece of again who I am, right? That uh you know, a big part of my identity. It's the first thing you see on my Twitter bio. I've been a podcaster 17 years. Where were 16 of those years? RBR. And I love that all 16 of those years are still up. That if you go to rbwrestling.com, you basically can listen to me grow up over
Mhm,
16 years. You can listen to my whole adulthood come you listen to me from 17 and grow up right before your ears. It all exists right there. And I am so grateful that I had the opportunity to do that long. And I'm really grateful that I made some friends along the way, both in and out of the community. That uh, I love that everybody who's currently on the show, I guess not really Noah, but the three, uh, I guess, other members of the current Fatal Four were all members of the community at one point
mhm.
and all eventually joined. And I think that's really cool that it is a show that not only grew a community behind it, but then brought the community in. So RBR, one of the things I always used to like to say on the show is that RBR is not just our show, it's your show as well. And we
Yeah.
want your voices heard right before I would give out the phone number. That's the thing I always said. But I always meant that because I love that uh it started off with myself, Michael Z, Nick Marsico, and Anthony Scatz. But then um, Michael Z leaves, Jason Gallup comes in, Anthony Scatz leaves, Paul comes in. Paul was a member of the community. Paul wasn't an original
Mhm,
host, but he comes in as a part of the community and joins and hosts the show. And then when Jason left and Matt Galloway comes in, Matt again was a frequent caller on the show. Matt was not an original member of the show who he didn't know Matt, but he became a friend of ours through such. And now Matt, I was actually going to call him this afternoon. And Matt's another person who came in, part of the community, and joined the show. And then Felipe Diaz Vera comes in, replaces Nick Marsico. Same deal, another member of the community. And Maxwell Baumbach replaces Felipe Diaz Vera, a member of the community. Maxwell was a
mhm.
caller. He won Cinco de Hosto. No, he didn't win Cinco de
No,
Hosto.
the
Sorry, there
Money in the
wasn't another
Bank.
to win. He won the Money in the Bank and then did Cinco de Hosto. And I remember the first time Maxwell hosted, I was like, hey, I like this guy and I want him hosting more. That I loved Maxwell the second I heard him. But he was another one who came out of the community, joined the show. Eric Brady was one of the most hated members of the community because um, he used to troll the hell out of people, but he made people laugh in the process. And he was Sports 103 on the forums with a Z, Sports. And the Eric
The
Brady again,
forums.
when Matt Galloway left, Eric Brady came in. He was another member of the community. And I love that even in my leaving and Cody coming in, who was a longtime member of the community,
Mhm,
that you've come in, longtime member of the community. I love that the show has just continued to bring in that it's been community driven. And that means a lot to the show. And I
mhm.
think that it's really cool that it has continued, that I didn't want it to die with my leaving, and I'm really glad it didn't. That was actually my specific ask. That was the one thing that I had said when I said that back in 2020 when I told the guys that, hey, I'm probably going to be leaving around this point. I specifically stressed, but the thing I don't want to see happen is the show go under. I want it to continue, and I think you guys should continue it. And I'm glad that it is still going because I think that's a great thing.
Word, word, word. It's just here we are. It all comes full circle. You helped plant the seed that grew me into a broadcaster, that got me into the community, that got me to hosting the show. And now we're here, we're talking with each other. It's fucking I don't believe things happen by coincidence. I think things come together to make things happen at certain points in time. So here we are, sir. But unfortunately, we have we have reached the end. So before you go, let everybody know where they can find you on social media and everything that you got going on.
Well, my Twitter handle and Instagram username are William RBR. Those haven't changed, and they won't. So I'm William RBR on pretty much all social media platforms. It started as my Xbox Live gamer tag. It's still that too. And you can find the shows I host. I do host Grapsody every Saturday at noon Eastern, 9 a.m. Pacific. That can be found at youtube.com/fightful. I also host Day After Dynamite on Fightful Overbook. That's every Thursday at 4 p.m. Eastern. That's 1 p.m. Pacific. And again, that's at Fightful Overbooked. I review Dynamite every week for Fightful Overbooked. And we had a great episode yesterday. SB3 is a phenomenal guest. And Felipe Diaz Vera hosted with me a couple weeks ago.
Mm-hmm.
Rob's hosted the show. And I've also had and coming up in the future, I'll even have many of my former RBR peeps. So just know I keep in conversation with people, and so that's while you may or may not see certain people on Grapsody, Day After Dynamite is one of those shows where I'm going to be talking Dynamite with people, so it's still going to continue to be fun. But yeah, that's where I'm at. I was on Wrestling Observer Live just last week with Andrew Zarian. So I'm pretty much everywhere these days. I'll be at WrestleMania weekend. I'll be at Double or Nothing. I'll be
there. You be there. You come find
yes.
him. So
Come find me.
when you getting your accounts verified?
Mm. when Fightful gets verified, the rest of us will. Which
Shit,
is insane that
yeah.
Fightful isn't verified. Fightful Select is,
Yeah.
which of course, but Fightful Select only has one reporter, Sean Ross Sapp. But Fightful still can't get verified. We still keep getting denied. 78,000 followers, we still can't get verified. Trust me, Kyler, who runs that account, has been trying, but still can't get verified.
I don't know. You have the uncanny ability to just kind of be in the right place at the right time for a lot of things or whatever. And sometimes,
The wrong time. Yeah.
Yeah. But yeah, I think the verification thing would be funny for me, it just pop up one day, I like unbeknownst to you, be like, oh, well, that's a thing now.
Yeah. So I will say it's not even something that I've been like on the hunt for, but if it happens, that's cool. Mainly because there's a lot of checkmark accounts that I like hate, and I'm like God, why did they give you mainly because there's so much credence lent to the checkmark, and they just like say dumb shit. And I won't say the three accounts I'm talking about, but if you spend enough time on wrestling Twitter, you know who they are. And
Hey man, but
yeah.
if you get that power, you have great responsibility, and I know you can probably get some more Jay-Z tweets.
Yes, exactly. Exactly.
But as it has been for every guest of the Random Realms with Rob, you have been a guest. The door is always open for you to come back to shoot
I
the
would love to.
shit, or damn, you had me flustered about how I do my outro. But anyway, we's done with this motherfucker. It's all over. I appreciate you very dearly, sir, for
I appreciate
giving
you
me
having
this
me.
platform. Just all the things and stuff, and yada 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 yada. We done.